What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, and thank you guys for tuning in to our Week 6 BC Lions preview as they get ready to take on the Edmonton Elks this upcoming Sunday, July the 13th. How the weeks are flying by, folks. I know how I've chatted about it already a few times, but can't believe it's already a month and a half through the season, getting into July, into August, where the games will start to get more and more important as we start to kind of get a bigger picture, I guess is maybe the right phrasing, a bigger picture of how teams are looking, different sample sizes, obviously with the BC Lions, and I know a lot of teams, or excuse me, a lot of people will maybe look to discredit the week one, victory over Edmonton, another possible a chance of getting a victory over Everton, and maybe not legitimize the win versus Montreal and look at BC not being maybe the team that they show they are after the next few weeks. And I think, as I said, with the bigger sample size, the more games come, or the more games being played, excuse me, you're able to get a better sense of how your team is doing. So before we get into today's Week 6 preview with the BC Lions, and we will be joined shortly, once again, already here through 6 short weeks, and a back-to-back guest with Andrew Hoskins, host of the Turf District, contributor to 3 Down Nation, and friend of the program, joining us once again. So we'll get to Andrew here in a matter of moments. But of course, folks, before we get into it, if you got a couple of reminders, all the thank yous, of course. But first and foremost, if you guys are enjoying today's video, of course, be sure to like the video, comment down below, let us know how you guys are feeling. If you're Lions fans, if you're making your way over from the Double E side of things, let us know how you're feeling after picking up your guys' first victory last week. And how excited you are for another home game. I'm sure the Elks fans, and I know Andrew specifically, will be excited for the tailgate pregame and all the festivities that go on there in Edmonton. So let us know how you guys are feeling down in the comment section below. Of course, most importantly, subscribing to the channel. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload a video like this one. Speaking about live, still a TBD on whether or not we will be live for this week's post-game recap, although the numbers have been pretty good. And I know that you guys enjoy this, the few that do tune in and are able to interact with us in the chat. So TBD, as I mentioned, though, the best way to stay up to date and following us on our social media platforms. First and foremost, at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram, doing quite well over there, surpassing the 3,000 followers milestone. Of course, attention to all those, or a big call out to all those to, if you guys are following on our Instagram and are not subscribed, please come on over to the YouTube, subscribe to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. And of course, you guys can find us on Twitter at _CFNX on there as well. So stay up to date with some of the info over there, and that's how you guys will be up to date with what's going on this week. So before we get into the preview, of course, we got a couple of reminders with all the content that we have been putting out. I almost forgot that we need to squeeze in a preview this week with how much of the content we've been putting out with the British Columbia Football Conference season being right around the corner. Actually, a week today, by the time you guys are listening to this, or the day this is uploaded, Saturday, July 12th. Next week, July 19th, the British Columbia Football Conference kicks off, and we actually started our collaboration, or kicked off our collaboration partnership with the BCFC. For those that aren't aware and maybe haven't been checking out some of those videos on our channel, we actually started that partnership with doing our BCFC season previews, where we sat down with 6 of the 7 head coaches across the conference. We're able to get a good sense of how the teams are looking, an outlook on each of the teams, as well as inside look, some of the goods as well, with a little bit of intel from each of the head coaches. It was a lot of fun. As I mentioned, really appreciative of all 6 head coaches for sitting down with me as well. I know how busy their time is with main camp right now, being able to juggle life outside of football as well. So super gracious of all of their time, and would just highly recommend all those football fans that are looking for more football to consume. The BCFC is a great product on the field, and turns out CFL prospects, almost every year where they're ending up in the CFL. So as I mentioned, a little bit of a partnership with them in this upcoming season, where we'll be doing more content. Started that off with our season previews, and as I said, this week's been a whirlwind trying to finish those up. Finished about 3 of them, trying to get them up, as well as trying to get our preview and all that stuff with our BC Lions side of things. So as I mentioned, If you guys are looking for some more football to consume, head over to the Canadian Football Fanatics and check out our BCFC, British Columbia Football Conference season previews as the season kicks off 1 week from today. So I believe it is time, I see he is backstage. Friend of the program, host of the Turf District podcast, and contributor to Three Down Nation, Andrew Hoskins, joining us here tonight. Andrew, thanks for joining us. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me on to chat some football. Love it.
Yes, of course. I said it's already week 6. We have a double dip with getting your guest appearance on here twice. So, Andrew, starting with last week, obviously you guys were able to get your guys' first victory of the season. Mark Killen's first victory as head coach, and obviously hadn't got a victory up until that point. So, just how needed was last week for the Elks and being able to end on a positive after a win last week?
I think the most important part was to see that continued growth, and we did see that in that game. And the W definitely helps, especially at home where you're trying to draw more fans and bring them in to see what's going on with this team. And they took some steps forward every game, and so we kind of had a feeling this might be that game where they found that way, and they did. And so absolutely very important, especially after facing three really good teams. Not that Ottawa isn't a good team, but we were lucky enough, I guess, to have Drew Brown coming back off of injury, and so he wasn't right on cue as normal. So we'll take it, and it kind of helps to build that feeling in the locker room that it's not just we're not just getting those quote unquote moral victories. We're finding a way to play a majority of, if not all of, a 60-minute game to find a way to win. So it's a big thing.
You talked about improvement there, Andrew, and that's where I want to start with. One Trey Forty has been highly talked about within your fan base across the CFL, and I think he's kind of quietly improved week by week for the Edmonton Elks at quarterback. I'm curious, kind of what your thoughts are over the 4 game sample size. With obviously you guys have a bye week in there as well. And then kind of the thoughts of what happened last week with, Cody Fajardo kind of getting some looks there. Obviously, I know they talked about it on the broadcast of potentially being a little bit planned. I thought that it was unfortunately maybe a little bit of backfired on the Elks, and of course, hindsight is 2020. But with watching the game, it kind of was that momentum staller, and it kind of almost allowed the Red Blacks back into the game. That first opportunity, it definitely did when the Elks went, I believe, 2-0. And then the Red Blacks started to regain momentum, crawl back in the game. And then in the second half, I believe Trey Ford was just coming off a touchdown drive, if I'm not mistaken, and they went to Cody as well. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, with hindsight being 2020, coming into the game if you have that pre-plan, then that's one thing, and you kind of maybe don't want to go away from your plan pre-game. But as I mentioned, maybe a two-part question: what are your thoughts overall on Trey Ford this season? I think the steady improvement that he's been showing, and then just kind of what we kind of, I guess, saw last week.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Uh, the big thing about Trey is that we are seeing those steps forward every week, and the last 2 games, the steps have been made forward in the passing game, and we're not seeing him scramble very much. He has, only one scramble in each game, and running we know that's such a big weapon of his. So I wouldn't be surprised as things kind of move on if we start to see that weapon a little bit more, but it's great to see the progression, and you can even see from week 1 against BC to where he's throwing, even in the Winnipeg game and then the Ottawa game. Uh, Definitely a lot more fire on those balls and fitting him into short areas. So the progression is there. I think he's still working on his reads of the defense, and he's still working on where does that ball kind of need to be to catch the guy in flight. And a couple of ones. A great example last week was the Javon Leak catch. I don't know why I needed to switch those around, but the Javon Leak catch, where we talked to him about it after the game, and he's like, "Well, Javon was supposed to be a little more left, and I still threw it, and there was, I kind of trusted him to go get it. And as it turns out, he makes a brilliant catch, but there's 2 defenders right there. So I think he's still kind of working on where that needs to go to be the safe throw. With an 88% completion percentage, you think, okay, well, he's starting to learn that. But I think these are the things. I kind of am approaching this not that he's a rookie, but it's like his second season because he's having to learn a new offense. He's having to learn some new receivers. He's also trying to really solidify that game decision making that maybe he hasn't had the greatest support in making some of those decisions to this point. So um, I am excited to see where he goes from here. I do want to see him use his legs a bit more. I don't want him to get hurt, but I do want to see him do that because it's just such a massive weapon for him. And I think that balance will be really important for the team. As far as the Cody Fajardo thing goes, talking to Mark Killam, like you said, after the game, he said it was planned that they were going to give Cody some looks. I talked to Trey as well, and he said one of the weird things was that their iPad wasn't working right at the time, and so they weren't really being able to get some great looks on the defense. And so putting Cody in gave him a chance to kind of see the defense and then come off and talk to him about it. And so I don't know if that kind of was the main reason that they stuck with the plan, because you're right. I believe it was a momentum killer. When you look at, Trey was 8 for 8 at the time that they put Cody in the first time, and they had put 2 touchdowns on the board in their first 2 drives. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to be okay. Let's throw in another quarterback at this point, but they said they wanted to give Cody some reps. They want to make sure that if something happens, that he has, he's not going in cold per se. He needs to have some time with the ones and with these guys on the field. I just wish it would have been when we were up by 20 points and not when we're just kind of shaking it up in the middle of the second quarter there. So we'll see how if they keep doing that. But again, if it gives some perspective, both for Trey to kind of watch the game from the sideline a little bit under Cody, and for Cody to come back and say, look, I'm seeing this. Did you see this on this play? Maybe that actually helps for both of them to kind of build that rapport and continue to learn more on the field.
Yeah, I know one thing you mentioned there, Andrew, well, maybe in your first answer there, and you mentioned Trey's kind of learning, this new offense with Jordan Maximic and that connection between, coordinator and quarterback of, understanding what Trey likes and maybe understanding kind of Maximic's offense a little bit. And, having experience with Jordan here in BC, understanding that, he's maybe getting used to the maybe weapons he has at his disposal in the, running back room, right? And kind of leaning
Yeah.
on that and being able to trust that, right? And I think maybe that's been something that's been questioned of him in the past. And I'm curious, Andrew, when kind of maybe pivoting there, and obviously last week was a very good showing for obviously maybe Javon Leak on the return side of things, but I know he's been pretty productive when lining up in the backfield for the Elks this season, as well as of course Trey's the weapon that he is on the ground as well. Rankin finally kind of having a good day and putting up, I believe it was just under 100 yards, I believe. What do you think of the running attack? And I think a lot of Elks fans were kind of wanting this to be the focal point of the offense after last season, showing what it was, how big of a factor it was in a lot of those games for you guys down the stretch last season, and being able to, as I said with Maximic, just trust that you can kind of lean on that run game to open up the rest of the offense. What are your thoughts on kind of the run game here through 5 weeks for the Edmonton Elks?
Yeah, I think last week was a big show for definitely for Justin Rankin. A total of 174 yards for him between the 74-yard TD run, the 50 or 45-yard screen pass that he took into the end zone. Crossed 100 yards for the first time rushing. So a big deal, and that's kind of what we're used to seeing with the run game in the last probably year and a half. And so I think as a fan base, we were really expecting to have a lot more running right up front and using the run to set up the pass. And I'm not sure if that's just like, well, everybody expects that, so we'll do something different and see if that works. But you could see that I think as well, like the changes on the offensive line, they needed time to learn how to block together as well. And I think this last game was probably the best blocking that I've seen from them, where that again, that 74-yard run by Rankin, when I asked him after the game, he said, you could have run through that. And I'm like, I don't think you've seen me run. But needless to say, it's the holes are opening now. They're starting to learn where they need to be, and that's without David Beard in the lineup, who will probably be coming back in here before too terribly long, if not this particular Sunday. So otherwise, they were inserting David Beard, they were inserting Gregor McKellar. Now they had Mark Evans in there, who was covering for Boyko on right tackle for a little bit. Now is playing left guard. So I think they needed some time, and they had that little bit of consistency here. And obviously that starts to pay off, right? So the trick for me is to see, because I know that Maximic's, his favorite part of the game is the long ball and using his guys downfield. Um, but these weapons, not that we don't have weapons to take the top off, but we do need the guys to. It has to be like the body blow plays of the run to set up those passes, and now we're seeing Trey with really good passing, so maybe that RPO becomes a even bigger threat because he can pass, he can take off himself, but he could also, be dumping it off to somebody who can also take it off. So I'm excited to see how that kind of builds, and I think this is kind of building that up right now. So hopefully more running in the future, but even some more running from Trey as we kind of shake that up to keep people guessing.
Yeah, well said, Andrew. I'm curious as we transition to the defense for the Elks. I think for myself being outside the fan base, I think I had higher expectations for this unit. I could imagine that the fan base is maybe feeling some ways just based on how the first few games have went. I'm curious, kind of just your thoughts of, coming into the season, I thought kind of maybe arguably the best front seven across the CFL with some of the names they brought over from Toronto. You look at the nut linebacker position with Niles Morgan. And I don't know if necessarily maybe they disappointed, but I feel like maybe a little bit underwhelming through the first few games. What are your just general thoughts on kind of the defense and the way they've performed so far?
Yeah, the defense is a conundrum because we all thought that that was going to be the strength of the team. And throughout the first four games, they've given up 400 yards in every game of offense. Now, the last game, majority of that was, on the last couple of drives when it's garbage time or whatever you want to call it, because they were running about that 320 ish range, and then Ottawa had a big diving run on that. So I I saw steps there last week where they were a little bit more comfortable in the backfield. Um, I really really like the addition of Jalen Garnes as the Sam linebacker. Not that Cordell Jackson wasn't good at it, but Cordell is great on a lot of different spots, and him dropping back to half, I think, has kind of helped secure down Devondrick Bynum on the corner a little bit, and Jalen has been wonderful as a rookie. And he had 9 tackles last week, and that's just like that's Nick Anderson stuff. That's who the guy who usually gets it. But so I think that secondary is starting to kind of come together and being able to communicate and understand what they need to do. The front four is not getting near the pressure that we thought they would. And they know it. They know that they have underperformed to this particular point. And it now looks like Robbie Smith likely won't play this week with an elbow injury. So we're looking at guys like Jake Serezna and Jared Brinkman, who honestly is the one that I think has really stood out until Serezna started to have some games here in the last couple. But we're looking at guys like Brandon Barlow. Is he going to be able to take another step on this line? Is Kongbo going to do? We haven't really seen hardly anything from him, to be terribly honest. So I think it's that front four that we're thinking, yeah, we need to be getting a little more pressure. And I'm hoping as they kind of learn each other, we'll start to see that a little bit more. The pressure that they have got, I think they only have 1 sack, possibly 2 on the season. When they get back there, it's the quarterback is scrambling and they are not able to get him. So they almost had Drew Brown a couple of times, but he snuck his way out of there. So I'm curious to see what happens as they continue to have the same front four and try to push forward. Of course, I just said that Robbie Smith isn't playing, but they'll have that rotational guy that's coming in. See if that actually makes a little bit of a difference, and they feel a little more comfortable in getting that pressure now that the secondary is starting to kind of solidify.
When looking at the matchup this week, Andrew, I'm curious of what your thoughts are on that. And obviously, I know I don't have to sugarcoat it because we chatted a little bit about it the first time I had you on in week one of kind of the BC Lions for whatever reason the last few years have just had the Elks number, for whatever reason it may be. But streaks are made to be ended. At some point, kind of things have to, come to an end and maybe start a streak for the Edmonton Elks per se, right? So I'm curious. I'm sure that you guys are feeling, hopefully confident that you guys can maybe build a streak for your own. You're back at home once again, which should be a good feeling. And being able to build, I think both teams. This is a very big game for each team to kind of build off their win. Getting out of the gates kind of a little bit or slower for each side and being able to almost prove to themselves that we can do this, right? And get that confidence, getting that snowball rolling down the hill to start to gain momentum for each side. So I'm curious for the Elks side of things. What is kind of your maybe pathway when thinking about the matchup this week for the Elks to maybe pull out a win on Sunday?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Like you said, the Elks haven't had a lot of success, especially with Nathan Work at the handles. Or at the lead spot. It'd have been fine if he was still like injured for one more week. Like that would have been okay. I can't say I'd have been upset. But I do think that he definitely poses a giant risk for this defense, and so I'm hoping, because now that there's a little bit of video, a little bit of tape out there, as compared to week one, where you go in, there's the Snoop Dogg concert. There's no real video on how they're going to play. You've got Buck Pierce is not a new offensive coordinator, but new to BC with those weapons and not really knowing how they're going to use them. Now there's a little bit of that out there, and can the defense exploit that a little bit to put some pressure on Nathan Rourke? And now that the secondary seems to be, as I said, a little more solidified, are they able to kind of cover downfield, or when that ball comes out from Nathan Rourke, are they able to get those knockdowns, or maybe that elusive INT that we haven't seen to this year yet? But I think that's probably the biggest challenge for the Elks. So the best way for them to have a path towards another W is to have extended, long offensive drives, and that's a hard thing to do. The BC defense is not, they don't just lie down. They're a good defense, but I think as we see this progression from Ford, we're looking at, okay, how can we take these to a 6-7 minute drive that, and even if it ends in a field goal, at least you're keeping work off of the field. And if they can do that, and then maybe a little more special teams magic, then I think they have a decent chance to pull out a W here.
Awesome, Andrew. Appreciate you once again. You always give great insight, and especially when it's last minute, Andrew. I don't know if you caught that when you're coming in here. That we've been doing the BCFC season previews here on our channel. So we've been booking guests throughout the week and stuff like that. And then got to Friday, and I realized I don't have a guest for our preview this week. So I had very typically quick at work there, and as I said, Andrew, you're such a great friend to the program and a great ambassador for the CFL and kind of the content community. I know you guys do a great job with the Turf District with you and Superfan Mike, of course, Commish Kayla, and
Yes.
all the content you guys do on a weekly basis. It's a fabulous job, and as I said, just so gracious of your time, and especially last minute like this, Andrew, where you were very gracious to just whenever you're available, I can make it work. So once again, just super thankful for you, Andrew.
Hey, no problem. Like I said before, I love coming on to talk football with you guys, and I'm really happy that I can be a part of it, and I'm glad you keep asking me back. So whenever you need me, I'm nearby.
Awesome, Andrew. Enjoy the night, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds great, man. Enjoy the game.
Awesome. Host of the Turf District, Andrew Hoskins. All righty, folks. As we wrap up the first half of our season preview, excuse me, season preview, as you see where my head is at, and it is, folks, the end of the week. So it is Friday, thankfully. Saturday by the time you guys are listening to this, but it has been a long week and definitely need a nice relaxing Friday night. I'm going to actually enjoy Friday night football here in a matter of, I guess, 30-ish minutes by the time we're done with this, as it actually worked out pretty nicely with the delay due to the, I believe, smoke in the area and air quality. So worked out pretty well. Big shout out to Andrew once again, as I said, the last minute pivot to it's been busy week with the season previews and trying to wrap those up for the season. Is kind of a week away. That was the plan, and then uh, realizing, holy smokes, we have a preview to record tonight, and we need to get a guest ASAP Rocky. So thankful for Andrew once again. He is a awesome fellow for stepping up like that very last minute and just letting us know whenever is whenever is okay for me, whenever is okay for him. So big hat tip to Andrew once again. Let's get to it, folks. Wasn't really able to get to too much of our initial thoughts. As I said with Andrew, big game for each team, for both teams trying to, as I said, push that snowball down the hill, get the snowball starting to gain momentum, starting to pack snow onto it, starting to get into a bigger snowball, and starting to get into a force to be reckoned with. So both clubs should be desperate. I think the one of the keys, and not isn't going to be, I don't know if it's going to be my key. You stay tuned. Should be that the Lions need to be the more desperate team, right? Both teams are coming into this desperate to continue their momentum, especially with the three teams ahead of them in the Western Division right now. One team is going to lose tonight in the Saskatchewan Calgary matchup. That being said, I think regardless of what happens over the next maybe few weeks, despite I know BC's matchup with Saskatchewan next week, I think rightfully so. Those are the three top teams in the Western Division right now, and Edmonton and BC are trying to prove that they at least are on the doorstep of being in that conversation. I think both teams um, are just outside of that. I would maybe put BC on the doorstep. I think BC with their injuries and Jeremiah Masoli being in there kind of gives them a little bit of wiggle room to be a little bit closer in that conversation. But as I said with Andrew, it's hard to kind of you know ignore the numbers, right? With the Lions uploaded, I believe, the content piece today of Rourke's like just biggest games against Edmonton, and they're ridiculous video game type stat lines, right? And Nathan's had tremendous success versus the Elks the last number of seasons, last number of starts. We'll talk about Nathan here in a little bit. And when talking about BC having Edmonton's number, 9 of the last 10, I believe, was the reported number. JC Abbott, I think, said it today on the Three Down Nation, or actually, it wasn't today, I guess, but when I was able to catch this week's episode of the Three Down Nations weekly podcast, JC mentioned that, dropped that little um, nugget in there, I will say. And lastly, I think the important thing for BC, get this victory. Why they need to be the more desperate team, right? Edmonton, rightfully, maybe you could argue, is the more desperate team at 1-3 still. BC should be the desperate team because clawing back to 500 puts you right back into the hunt of things. As I mentioned, with them probably being a little bit closer to the doorstep than Edmonton, that you're knocking on the door going into Saskatchewan at home, an opportunity for you to legitimize yourself above 500, 4-3 record, knocking off Saskatchewan as well. Big time opportunity if BC is able to capitalize on this week and take advantage, getting a win, walking out of Edmonton into a date with Saskatchewan at home next week. So, first, we have bigger fish to fry because we have to worry about this game and this preview before we get to later games down the road. So, my last thing in our little initial thoughts here before we get to some injury reports, offense, defense, and three keys to wrap today's preview. Temeka Ture was announced that he had the 1 game suspension, so he won't be in the lineup this week due to his the implications that happened at the end of the game. The fight, I guess, is just the way to call it if we're calling a spade a spade. And I know there is some opinions. I'm not going to get too much into this because I think that's pointless, in my opinion. I did have a brief conversation with the fellows on our weekly show on the 13th Man Sports YouTube channel this week, which shameless and small plug. Tune in every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Pacific. Ton of fun with Blake, Coach, Shane, and myself talking all things Canadian football. You guys, if you missed out on an episode and want to go back and check it out, I would check out this past one. It was a lot of fun and some good arguments and debates, some might say. So, as I said, Temeka Ture is going to miss 1 game with suspension due to last week's event. So, before we get into the matchups here, folks, let's get into a little bit of a injury report by the BC Okay, dokie. Energy report. Sorry, folks, for a little bit of silence there, as I don't have my partner. I don't even know what I should call my partner at this point. The guy shows up for one show and then MIA for the rest of the week, pretty much. Injury report. Let's get into it. Adam Leclerc. Oh, linebacker. Something stuck in my tooth from dinner, folks. Um, Adam O'Clair, linebacker. He is going to be out this week. We saw he got banged up, I believe, on special. I want to say kickoff, if I'm not mistaken. We saw him have to kind of get carried off the field. Definitely looked like a pretty brutal one with the ankle injury. More than a rolled ankle, I would imagine it's some sort of sprain. DNP all 3 days at practice. I would imagine we'll kind of have to wait and see how long it's going to be for Adam Moncler. Don't believe we have any indication if he's been placed on any of the 1 game, 6 games quite yet. But when transitioning the next player and talking about 1 game injury list, Mike Couture has been placed on the 1 game injury list with a hand injury, with a DNP all 3 days at practice as well, and is listed out. Going to be an interesting one. It's going to have to be a pivot now at center, right tackle, and possibly, at guard as well. So we'll see what happens. Going to be some moving pieces for the Lions to, continue to uh, play at a pretty fairly high level. 4 sacks given up through 5 games. Not bad. They they haven't played perfect. I would say it's been tough because I feel like people probably think I'm so in the middle and I can't criticize, or maybe I criticize too much, but they haven't played good enough and they haven't played bad enough yet. They played just fine. It's been um it's been okay. It's been good enough to win. Let's just say that. And the few losses, not to blame one player, but you could argue due to backup quarterback being in the game and Jeremiah Masoli just not looking great. If we're being 100% honest, and I hate to say that, I hate to trash Jeremiah Masoli like that, but we're calling a spade a spade. He looked like shit. So hard to blame the offensive line. And when you get a real pitcher, I think when talking about the offense, the execution, I tweeted it during the game last week. How nice did the execution just feel with Nathan Rourke leading the charge opposed to anybody else? Man, it was night and day for the Lions offense and was just a breath of fresh air compared to what we just watched for the last 2.5 games of, oh my God, this this is the Lions are, as I said, with I believe maybe even last week could have been. The Lions are the most depending on their quarterback. Let me rephrase this. The Lions are across the CFL the team that most depends on their starting quarterback being in the lineup. And you could argue, Ottawa, you could argue Montreal, you could argue whoever you want, Calgary, Winnipeg. I would say Winnipeg even maybe proved that wrong with Chris Trevor looking pretty good. Um, it's just like, oh man, the difference in execution was night and day, and what a nice feeling it was. And the execution, as I said, was night and day. But the Lions even kind of, bit themselves in the ass in a sense of all the penalties and the penalties offensively last week. It was brutal of Nathan Work getting him in position and a penalty would happen, or Nathan Work would run for a touchdown like last week and a penalty would happen. And just the unfortunate side that came with, a lot of the good last week was it was kind of erased by a lot of the bad that happened last week because for 90% of that game it was ugly. And Nathan Work essentially kind of played that trump card of, I'm that guy, I'm going to be able to will this team to victory, and they had a shot late to get in field goal position, and they did and executed well, and then Whitey did his thing, Mr. Automatic. So when getting back to the injury report here, folks, Adam Leclerc out, Michael Couture out, Thibaut Tobias is going to be another one out with an ankle injury, DNP, limited, and then a DNP to end the week, listed as out. He was the guy that got hurt towards the end of the game last week, I believe, and is going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on because Thibaut Tobias going down and being out for this week, and the Lions potentially, I know it's we'll get into it right here. Dwayne Hendricks and Jonah Tobias being participants in practice this week. When you look at Dwayne Hendricks, thigh injury, limited, and then back-to-back fulls. Listed as questionable. I think that's probably a little bit more gamesmanship than anything. I would think he's going to be close to being ready to go. Marcus Moore, limited, 2 fulls and available is a good sign. And then Jonah Tavai, limited, 2 fulls and then questionable. Maybe that does kind of, I guess, bring down the urgency of being without Thibaut Tavai, that you're likely going to be at close to full strength. You're going to be without backup rotational defensive tackle because you'll have Christian Covington still. You're going to have Marcus Moore, potentially at your disposable, Dwayne Hendricks and Jonah Tavai in there as well. So going to be a big game for those guys to be back, and then hopefully at full strength with the thigh injury to Dwayne Hendricks, full to end the week both days. I would imagine he's going to be good to go. And you look at Jonah Tabai, limited 2 fulls. Same with Marcus Moore, elbow and a calf injury. Elbow to Marcus Moore, calf injury to Jonah Tabai. Both questionable except for Marcus Moore. I would expect those 3 guys, or those 2 guys, I guess, to go, with Marcus Moore being available and likely to go. So when going down the injury report even more, we have JNP, excuse me, GEC with the illness this week, missed a couple practices, and then DNP. GEC, we might have to start having the conversation of him as well, and maybe not to his fault, right? With him being a corner coming into the season, and the Lions trying to pivot to switch him to playing halfback, and he's struggled the last few games, and it's been pretty noticeable on the broadcast. And it's going to be something that the Lions probably going to need to look at in the offseason. I don't know if you can bank it bringing him back at any of the halfback positions. I think a guy like Robert Carter's done a pretty fine job. Um, um, Ronald Kent, um, and as I said with GACI, he just needs to be better. DNP this week to start, but illness, so I wouldn't worry too much. He should be ready to go. When looking at the running back position, an interesting one with Xander Horvath suffering a hand injury, 3 DNPs in a row, and is going to be listed as out. So I would imagine the lone running back they'll dress is probably, you know, JB. I would actually be curious, do they dress a guy like Jordan Tyrell and give him that opportunity with his maybe inability on special teams? So Jeremy Lewis could potentially be back. He's available this week for the first time in a few weeks after his foot injury. Justin McInnes, core injury, should be good to go. He's listed as available. Seb McGee, another guy that could potentially be back in the lineup. I think they need to maybe give him a shot at returner. We'll talk about returner in a little bit. I don't know if it's been as productive as we were hoping. And then Gary Peters has been dealing with a little bit of a hip injury the last few weeks, but I would imagine he'll be good to go. So let's get into the matchup, and then let's close things out here for our week 6 preview, as I'm going to try to get to the field actually tonight, as it's a football life for me, folks. Whenever I'm not talking football, watching football, I am watching more football, I guess, in person, I guess is the way to phrase that one, because going to hopefully try to get it my way out to Raiders practice here tonight. Last one of kind of their main camp week, if that's what you want to call it. And next week is game week, so things are for real next week. Things are for keeps. So hoping to get out to practice here tonight to end my Friday night, and then come back and finish the rest of the football game here. Hopefully it should be the second half, I would imagine, based on the delays. So should work out pretty nicely. So when talking about the offense versus the Elks defense, I think no place needed to start other than Nathan Rourke. And what I was just mentioning, just trying to reiterate already, his success versus the Edmonton Elks says all it needs to. And I think that success will continue versus the Edmonton Elks this week. There's a big reason why I picked them. I think this game is going to be a close one. I think both teams are trending in a better direction. I think Edmonton is truly trending in a better direction. I think Trey has improved over the last few weeks. I know we've been pretty critical of him on the weekly show, especially, and it's because we care. I know that's a saying too, right? We're critical because we care. We say something because we care. Be concerned if we don't, right? And that's I think a true sentiment. So been critical of Trey. Want to see more from him. I think he has improved. And we'll talk about it when we get to the defensive matchup in a little bit of kind of how I see things on that side. But I just think Nathan Rourke is going to be able to execute, do his thing, put them in position to put up points, enough points to get by the Edmonton Elks, whether it's a 3-point win, a 7-point win, or any points in between. I think it's a BC win, but by one score or less, because both teams are that close. So when talking about the offense, as I said, with the Lions being the most dependent team across the CFL on their starting quarterback, Nathan Rourke being under center for them on a week-to-week basis, it is a gift and a curse for you. As we saw the curse, if Nathan Rourke is in the lineup, you're likely going to lose the game, and it be in a ugly fashion with what Jeremiah Masoli put on film. The gift is, you know, the execution was crisp at time last week, but then it was unfortunately ruined by a lot of penalties and mistakes offensively. At the end of the day, the gift was Nathan Rourke putting up darn near 400 yards of total offense last week, of 350 yards through the air, I believe 40, 50 yards on the ground, led the team, I think, in rushing. 400 darn near yards, should have been 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, one got taken back due to the penalty, as I said. Nathan Rourke is going to be able to cover a lot of holes that your team has in your roster. It's just so, let me rephrase that. The BC Lions have the luxury that they have Nathan Rourke on their team. Now, there is these type of players across the CFL, right? I would argue that, Zach Collaros, or excuse me, yeah, you could argue in the history, Zach Collaros in the last few years was a player like that, right? When they were winning Grey Cups in the 21 and 19 season, I would argue that a Brady Oliveira is a type of player like that, right? Where you can kind of cover up a lot of holes that your team has, your roster has, with that said player. Nathan Rourke is that same caliber of player where he's going to be a gift to your team, but it is a curse at the end of the day where you're maybe overlooking a lot of holes that you have of saying, we can get by because we have Nathan today. He'll be able to rise the floor of our team because his ceiling is so high as a player. So is a gift, but is a curse at the end of the day for the Lions to have Nathan Rourke. So when talking about obviously coming off the injury report, it's going to be a big one for the Lions to make sure that they replace, or excuse me, not replace, continue to keep their protection at a quality level for Nathan Rourke, right? Where last week, obviously, Anaiuna stepped in due to all the injuries that have been happening there. The projected day one starter at right guard finally stepped in at the position due to injuries after, Tyler Packer goes down, David Foucault, the names go on and on, unfortunately for the Lions. Anaiuna gets to step back into the position. Played all right. Would like to get a better look. I actually didn't get to go look at a full rewatch this week, unfortunately, just due to how busy I was to see just how better or how good or maybe not good he played last week. Right tackle, Dejon Allen going to be out once again for the BC Lions. I believe, actually. I didn't see him on the injury report now that I'm thinking about it, and I don't know if he was placed on any 6-game injured list. I could be mistaken, but that could be a TBD, folks. I apologize for being unaware on that situation as of now, but I believe the Lions should be without 2 of their offensive linemen, Dejon Allen at right tackle and center Mike Couture, with Corey Woodruff playing left guard, as well as Joel Broxton being in the lineup for them as well. I'm curious to see who's going to be starting at center. I would imagine it's going to be probably they're going to probably stay away from Andrew Pearson, wanting to keep him as that 6 offensive lineman, that Swiss Army knife. Could it be rookie offensive lineman Alex Berwick? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. A draft pick from the University of Western, kind of very familiar in that heavy run game scheme that they built at Western. Somewhat similar, I guess you could call it, to a Buck Pierce scheme, although I know it hasn't been as a focal point, maybe as team fans would like, and maybe as expected going into the year. But that being said, going to be something to keep an eye out for the Lions, and they need to continue to do a quality job of protecting the quarterback and opening up run lanes for the offense. When talking about the skill position players, I called out Justin McInnes last week, and he definitely answered and stepped up to the occasion. I would imagine that a good majority of his quiet few games you could kind of chalk up to, not having QB1 there, if we're being completely honest. Justin McInnes stepped up when needed last week, having a big game when his number was called, and was a big time, option and weapon for his team last week. We have been calling for it. Somebody other than Keon Hatcher needs to step up. Justin McInnes did that last week. We still need somebody outside of them to kind of solidify themselves as that number 3. I think as of now, We have that number one. We have the number two. Who's that number three guy? Who wants to step up as a number three? Actually, no. You know what? Actually, forgive me, folks. Stanley Berryhill actually as well last week stepping up, big clutch touchdown late in the game. He sure has a connection with Nathan Rourke. We've seen it here when Nathan's been in the lineup. That was deep balls. Stanley Berryhill being able to beat the defense down the field, stay in bounds, get in the end zone for a clutch game. At the time, looked to be game winning. Obviously, Montreal was able to do their thing, and then Sean White went to one up them once again. But Stanley Berryhill, I would argue, has maybe solidified himself, proving myself wrong, and kind of pushed Katoy and Eberhardt down the rung just that much more, and is maybe not the best, excuse me, not the worst problem to have, right? When Jamal Katoy and Eden Eberhardt are your 4 and 5 guys in your lineup. So that kind of is basically my thoughts on the offense. When looking at the defense, against this offense, as much as I hate to say it, and I think there is legitimate improvements to Trey Ford's game, and I shouldn't even maybe hate this because it's just true. It's just simply the facts. You got to make Trey Ford one dimensional. You got to make that offense one dimensional and legitimately prove that he can beat you with his arm through the air. Now, maybe he does. Maybe he Chris Shelvers you, and I would argue that's even more impressive by Trey than Chris Shelver because um, I think Trey's had his fair share of haters, right? And he has improved, but he still hasn't, I feel like, taking that next step. And like Andrew said, right, you're kind of treating this like a second year, rightfully so, right? Unfortunately, his development has absolutely got scrambled eggs, if we're being completely honest, uh, due to the way he was handled with Taylor Cornelius and MBT being in front of him with the nightmare situation Chris Jones put him in early in his career. That being said, make Trey Ford one-dimensional and that offense beat you through the air and make them prove that they can legitimately march down the field, put up points, and get into what say maybe a shootout with Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions offense. I think that's a game that the Lions are much more comfortable in playing than the Edmonton Elks, if we're being completely honest. So make Trey Ford one-dimensional because when you flip that around, folks, if you don't, it's been a problem for how many weeks in a row? How many weeks, Cole? Wake up. How many years at this point? The BC Lions lack of run defense, being their Achilles heels on defense, and being the shadow, casting a shadow over their defense's successes and moments, I guess is maybe the best way to put it. When they have moments throughout a game, their inability to stop the run ends up biting them in the ass, ends up coming up big, and is a huge downfall of the BC Lions defense. Unfortunately, in a majority of their losses, and even in victories. Last week we saw it a little bit as well. Coming off the game that Rankin did, as I was mistaken, he did have over the 100-yard game. Catching passes out of the backfield was a weapon in that area as well. And Javon Leake, as I said, hasn't been maybe as effective, only I believe around 100 yards rushing on the year. But when in the game, he is a weapon. Has that home run threat of you better be doing your assignment on that given play, or he has that ability to take it to the house, has that ability to be a weapon on offense as well as special teams. And an area as we'll talk about a little bit. Special teams. The Lions need to be better on special teams. Um, and we'll talk about it actually, I guess, in a little bit. Then it comes to Trey Ford and his ability to scramble in the pocket, scramble outside of the pocket, extend plays, and that's what we saw in the first matchup of the year, BC and Edmonton. Trey Ford's ability to keep that game close in the first half was due to his scrambling ability, extending plays, keeping that offense alive, and hurting them outside of script. When he got outside the pocket and was able to find receivers downfield, it hurt the Lions. It did. And it's something, as I said, need to sell out on the run game, need to sell out loading the box. Lions showed some pretty interesting formations last week with 4 linebackers on the field, essentially, taking off one of the halfbacks, bringing on Josh Woods to have, Haladic, Woods, Alway, and Deontay Williams all on the field, as well as 4 defensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken. As I said, I didn't get to watch the second half of the game as they kind of started to play with their packages a little bit more and only watch that first half. So something to pay attention there. I think the Lions will go to those packages this upcoming week. Need to make Trey Ford one-dimensional, have to sell it against the run and nip that in the butt right away. Because if we're being honest, Andrew kind of alluded to it when we were talking about it. They don't have necessarily the weapons to lean on the pass game to be their strength. Their strength is get the run game going right away, bring the defense forward so that you can take those shots over top with the play action, with some of those speedier guys down the field, right? With the Curly Gittens Jr., the Kayon Julian Grants, right? Some of the guys that can sneak past your secondary with those play action looks. And I think is going to be something that the Lions need to do a good job, right? Because they have got hurt with selling out in the run, letting guys like Chris Shrubler, letting guys, Drew Brown a little bit, even in play action. Not Drew Brown. What am I talking about? Excuse me. Kyle Bethel Thompson a little bit last week. Picked them apart a little bit. And then defensively, I think the importance of, I said it in the injury report, Dwayne Hendricks, Marcus Moore, Jonah Tobias all being there, which it looks like they should be available, is huge in the defensive line needing to maybe create a little bit more chaos, destruction. I would like to see that up front, getting to Trey Ford, making him scramble when he doesn't want to, when there's nothing there, when making him feel uncomfortable, getting off his reads. And I think maybe flushing him when he's feeling the pressure and he's flushing early, right? And he doesn't have to, he has that pocket, getting to his head early on and creating some of that pressure early, I think is going to be huge, especially up the middle of the pocket so that guys like Matthew Betts on the edge can keep contained on the quarterback. So the defensive line, I would like to see them, this is a tough one in terms of sack numbers because getting a guy like Trey Ford down on the ground is just a hard thing to do of his athleticism, his talent level, his just pure natural God-given ability, if we're being completely honest, right? Not a lot of guys are going to be able to stop a guy like Trey Ford in any leagues, the NFL even included, right? Of a guy like Trey Ford and his ability to run is just a nightmare. And it's just, I can't reiterate enough. Gotta contain Trey Ford. Must contain Trey Ford. Keep him in the pocket and make him beat you as a pocket passer. And I think the BC Lions will be able to come out of this game victorious. So I think we can wrap this up with the 3 keys and get out of here, folks. Starting with number 1, and probably shouldn't be a surprise, the BC Lions need to be way more disciplined. The penalties have gotten out of control the last few weeks. Arguably should have cost them the game last week. It should have cost them the game before the penalty to Pierre Lestage, I believe, for the Montreal Alouettes, and gave the Lions an opportunity to win that game due to the field position. The Lions need to be better, especially I believe offensively. That I believe they're up towards the top of the league, not only in penalties now. I think they're top 3 in total penalties taken. As they were, I was bragging, they were towards the bottom through the first 3 weeks. Now they're towards the top, not only in penalties total, but offensively penalties. I think they're top 3 as well. I would argue even maybe they're top 1 if I saw that correctly. They need to be more disciplined. That is something that Buck Pierce needs to address. Whether it's, I don't care what, we've heard it, right? We've joked about it on Air Up multiple times now. Bakes is getting ripped doing all these push-ups, right? When I believe they have to do push-ups for penalties, I think the next week, the following week. So 10 sets per, I believe, or 10 reps, excuse me, for every penalty or something like that, I think is the punishment. We need to up that to 20 or something. It needs to be a bigger punishment because clearly the message isn't getting home, and it's something that the Lions have to address, must address. That is killing them, and is a third of the game that a lot of people in the Canadian Football League love to hang their hat on. It's a third of the game. It's a third of the game. Well, Buck Pierce needs to address that and hang his hat on that. Of, Benny, I know you're defense coordinator, and then I'm forgetting right now the special teams coordinator, but we need to, as a team, kind of address this. That this is an important thing for the Lions to clean up. And getting to my key number 2, special teams. When talking about Benny and talking to the special teams, I believe is it Paul Charbonneau? I don't know why I'm blanking right now. I don't know if Coach Charbonneau is the offensive line coach though either. Excuse me for not remembering the special teams coach for the BC Lions right now, but the Lions need to be better on special teams. Outside of course, Mr. Automatic Sean White, one more hat tip to you for another game winner in your CFL career, as well as Carl Myers, who has been fantastic, not only holding for all those kicks this year, 9 for 9 for the future Hall of Famer and arguably GOAT at the position, Mr. Automatic Sean White. Carl Myers for holding all those kicks as well as punts. His punts have been pretty consistent this year. That was the one thing that I was worried about. Of he has that absolute cannon of a leg, and he's been getting a hold of. This was maybe the first game last week that he didn't get a hold of one booming punt. He's been doing his job at consistently being consistent. Of no shanks, anything like that, coming off the side of your foot. Knock on wood. Hopefully, nothing is coming this upcoming week. So my next key, and might be a little bit cliche, and I've probably used it a few times in the past. I could arguably even use it in week 1. Let me actually go back and check. I did not. Wow. Okay, nice. I just banged the drum. I'm gonna bang the drum again. Contain Trey Ford, keep him in the pocket, and make him beat you as a pocket passer. Excuse me. Make Trey Ford prove that he can beat a team as a pocket passer, and I think, I will be okay on the other side. Although it did pain me on the post game show to come on here and talk about a Chris Shubber team, Chris Shubber led team beat the BC Lions, passing the ball through the air after I dared them to do so. I will gladly do so for a Trey Ford Canadian quarterback to come on here and eat crow per se. I will gladly do so, and don't even have to, you know, put away my pride. I could do that very willingly in a guy like Trey Ford, who we're rooting for Trey. We wanted to see him do well. Maybe not this week, but yeah, just wanted to see Trey do well. And I think when talking about the line side of things, the third and final key is keep Trey Ford in the pocket and make him beat you as a pocket passer. So I believe that should be all, folks. Crossed our T's, dotted our I's, put another fine bow on week 6 preview for the BC Lions taking on the Edmonton Elks in their final game of their road trip. 3 of 4 on the road the last month. A tough stretch. Had the opportunity to end it on a decent term. Go 2-2, get back to 500 is the goal. Getting to 500, and then let's worry about Saskatchewan after that, because the Lions are going to have an opportunity here in the next 6 weeks coming forward into Labor Day to really get back into the hunt, really start to make some headwaves, start to pile up the victories, and going to be an interesting one for the Lions for the next about month, 6 weeks or so, with some of the Hamiltons and Ottawas and Toronto's coming in. Eastern heavy portion of the schedule coming up here. Can the Lions build on that? Can the Lions, don't want to say take advantage, I hate that, but just calling a spade, folks. The Eastern Division this year has been can the Lions take advantage of some of that home cooking as well? They're going to be back at home next week, 3 or 4 on the road. They're going to start to get some games back at home with, I believe, Toronto comes to town, Saskatchewan next week, Hamilton's a home and home, Ottawa in August, I believe. So going to start to get some games at home where they're going to need to take advantage of being at home. And as I said, hopefully quarterback 1 continuing to stay in the lineup healthy as possible. If you guys enjoyed today's Week 6 preview, of course, like the video down below. It would be greatly appreciated, and all your support has been appreciated already through the season. Comment down below. Let us know how you guys are feeling about tomorrow's matchup with the Edmonton Elks, and how you guys are feeling if you guys have made it over from the Double E and you guys are Elks fans checking out today's preview, how you guys are feeling about today's game and Andrew's thoughts, etc. Most importantly, subscribing to the channel. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload a video like this one. As I mentioned about live videos, following our social media, because getting updates like if this week's post-game recap is going to be live or not is the best place to get updates. Following us on our Twitter page at _CF Fanatics, as well as our Instagram at Canadian Football Fanatics over there as well. Bringing all over the Instagram fanatics over to YouTube and Twitter, guys, because Twitter is lacking, as well as our YouTube isn't lacking, I would say, because our YouTube is pretty popping, as the kids would say. But our YouTube isn't as popping as our Instagram, which is crossed the 3,000, the 3K mark, which has been a cool milestone. Let's get the YouTube to 3K. Let's get it to 500 first, and then let's get it to 1K first. Then let's get it to 2K, and then the 3K milestone. But as that said, 75% of the people that are consuming our content remain unsubscribed to the channel, so it'd be greatly appreciated if you guys could subscribe to the channel. The numbers do not lie, folks, as we are getting them into our YouTube, things we get every month, the stats that come with our pages. So subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. And the support has been actually felt, folks. I want to give a big shout out with our BC Football Conference, British Columbia Football Conference collaboration. The subscriber uptick has been noticed the last week or so with our season previews dropping. So as I said, greatly appreciative of everybody's support. If you guys can continue to support. Lastly, be a friend, tell a friend. I haven't said this in a while about everything we got going on here at the Canadian Football Fanatics. BC Lions, British Columbia Football Conference, all things Canadian football, you name it, we talk about it here on the Canadian Football Fanatics on a weekly basis throughout the not only season but on a yearly basis. We take not a lot of time off. Well, I guess I should say not we. I don't take a lot of time off because Blake sure does throughout the season. But that's all. I guess jokes aside. That being said, so hope you guys enjoyed week 6 preview. The BC Lions taking on Edmonton Elks. Once again, shout out to guest of this week's preview, Andrew Hoskins, for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed our preview, and we'll catch you guys on the post game recap.